Hey folks, thank you for tuning in to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast. This is part 2 of our 2022 charter fishing season recap. If you guys haven't heard part 1, go back, listen to that, and it will dovetail nicely into this episode. So thanks for listening. Stay tight. Welcome to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast, where we follow 3 words of wisdom. You can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last, you'll just have to keep listening. Stay tight.
Yep, that's the one. That's the real one. Get up there, man. All right, get down low. Where's that real good? We doubled up. We doubled up. All right. Am I coming off or what? Get that down. Don't get on that rock right there.
So before we get too sidetracked, let's get back to where we were.
Where were we?
Let's see here. I know we were pretty much at like middle to end of August on the season. I'm just trying to get back to what like our last story here was.
When was Shark Killer?
Sharknado?
Yeah, when was Shark Killer?
Blue shark eater?
That was in August, right?
I think it was.
Where's the one that we released to fish?
It must have been middle to late August. Was it August 24th? Was the guy's name Mike?
No. It was on Line Shot. We released one on Line Shot.
I know. I'm trying to remember it. Oh, was it? No.
Maybe it was September.
What was the guy's first name? Do you remember?
It could be. Mike almost rings a bell.
Was it Kevin Duval?
Yes.
Northern Wall. Taylor ran the boat. 100 plus incher.
What day was that?
That probably
August
makes
26th. And we got one
Yes.
too. That was the one where that was
You got one at the very end of the day.
That was when I dropped it to the bottom.
Yeah.
That day. Yeah, that's where we left off. Was we were wanting to talk about those couple of crazy bites,
Right.
and then talk about. Do we want to start with the crazy? I say we start with your blue shark eating experience,
Dude.
just to get the.
So
blood flowing.
let's back way up. So
It's 3:00 in the morning.
no, way up, way
Even
up
before-
before
okay,
this,
okay.
before that day. So I have killed 2 blue sharks. 2 blue sharks? 2 blue sharks my entire life, both with the same person. And one of them was probably 15 years ago, I'd say, working on another boat. And I don't think this guy came back, really. Maybe for like a groundfish trip or something, but he never really came back until this year.
He just finished the last of his blue shark.
Yeah. Dude. So he shows up 3:00 in the morning. He goes, before he even like comes down the gangway, he's standing behind the little fence area, and he peers over and he's like, "Do you remember me?" That's the first thing he said. "Do you remember me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I remember you," but I'm like, you gotta key me in on like what day you're talking about. He's like, "I'm the blue shark guy," and I'm like, what the hell does that mean? What's the blue shark guy mean? He's like, "I'm the one who eats blue sharks." Dude, I immediately started. I'm pretty sure I started gagging right away. Ben and I look at each other like, "Oh shit!"
My name's
Because we saw it on the calendar. It said like tuna shark combo, and he's like, "I'm the one who eats blue sharks," and we're on the center console with decking that is fairly new, and I'm like, immediately, I'm like, "Dude, we're gonna have to kill a shark that's gonna like." Crash all over the place, possibly break something on the center console. It's kind of tight anyways, trying to like have a shark on the boat pretty much all day. And I'm like, and now what bag are we putting it in? How are we going to keep it cold? Because he wanted to basically kill anything to bring home for food.
Right.
And the guy's awesome. He's like, honestly, probably one of my favorite customers because he's just like go with the flow, doesn't really care what we do. But he did want to bring home a blue shark.
Definitely. That was his
100%.
priority number one.
So we were like, and this time of year in August, there's a ton of sharks on the bank. So we're like, let's just go to the bank. Because we've been getting like 3 to 12 sharks a day on top of a tuna bite or 2 tuna bites. So we were like, let's just go to the tuna grounds and go like way north of everybody, we'll throw out a chum bucket, throw a few shark rods out, and I don't know, maybe we'll throw a tuna rod out. So we basically set up our slick north of everyone, and there was like, did we have a blue shark first?
I believe we got set up.
Got set up and I put a down rod out.
We got
a tuna rod out.
We got 2 shark rods out. We got a down rod out. I'm pretty sure we just immediately went off with a tuna.
Yeah.
We had like a chum slick going. I think we marked a few things that looked sharky under the boat.
Right.
And we're like, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to say it was tuna then shark from what I heard
Yeah,
on the
I think
radio.
so we put it out like almost as a joke. We might as well just have a down rod out. You know, we had, I think, our 20s shark rods, you know, wire leaders and everything. And the down rod like immediately went off and we released a nice like 100-inch fish.
With the Rodan.
With the Rodan, yeah. We used the Rodan to anchor because we knew we were going to probably bump around that day. We didn't feel like dealing with the anchor. Yep. And released a nice fish. And we were all like laughing because we went out shark fishing, put a tuna rod out, and immediately hooked a tuna.
He didn't really want to catch a tuna was the thing.
Right.
He's like, it's kind of a lot of work. It was him and like his neighbor who came.
Yeah.
and you know, he was fighting it for a while and he's getting burnt out on it.
She did good. She did really well.
Yeah.
So then we get back to the spot, Rodan again, started chumming, and we hooked like the perfect killable blue shark.
Yep.
If that even makes any sense. First of all, eating a blue shark.
Eating any shark. Like there's a few select that like people are like they're good. They're just like sort of
they piss through their skin.
They piss through their skin.
So the first one we ever killed to this guy years ago, I actually brought a chunk home, and I'm like,
Right.
you know, obviously the rumors like this stuff is disgusting, and then there's like you could do this with milk and fucking put it on this and do that and. You know, make this like elaborate recipe, and apparently, like you can eat it, right?
It's safe.
Like, I'm pretty sure you could eat dog shit if you really like did the steps.
Put
that
enough
you did
buffalo
to eat this blue shark.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I brought a chunk home years ago, and I remember cooking it at my parents' house, and it threw the smell. Just cooking it, we were all gagging.
It was horrible.
I actually took a bite, and it was fucking disgusting.
It was horrible.
Just talking about it now, I can like smell that scent coming back, just baking in the heat.
I mean, no offense to, you know, if you want to eat one, you like it, but just
Dude, something's wrong with you.
it's not.
I mean,
not for me.
yeah. So apparently what he does is he freezes it right away. And I think he freezes it for like a month, actually. And then just deep fries it. He kind of does what apparently you do with catfish. I don't eat a lot of catfish. But
I kind of see that texture
apparently you
being
deep
similar.
fry it and it gets rid
I
of
don't
a
like
lot of
catfish.
that fish
Kind of
in
like
taste.
bacon, you get that outer fat crisped up.
Dude, I
and
don't know.
Sealing the flavor.
Anyway, so we end up catching this. We had this like 100-pound blue shark.
I bet
wasn't even 100 pounds.
Put a little Everglades seasoning on it.
some
Wouldn't be bad
Everglades.
at all.
Good to go.
You're good to go.
You might want to turn your.
It'll be okay, I think.
Yeah. So it wasn't even 100 pounds. This what was a shark like? 80 pounds, 70 pounds.
Yeah, it was like
Little
skinny
like
little
a five
snake.
5.5 footer one, but they're
Yeah.
skinny, small.
I didn't want a huge one
Right.
to bring home. I'm like, I want a little tiny thing that we can like put in a Ziploc bag. So this thing comes next to the boat, and I'm like, I guess we'll harpoon it. Like we had a harpoon ready, right? Because like sharks with straight gaffs don't really work because they just roll and they eventually twist out of the gaff. We didn't have a flying gaff because we very rarely use a flying gaff. So Ben decides he's gonna harpoon it, and he absolutely drills this thing like right in the back. And I'm like, this is gonna be easy. And the dark comes out, and I'm like,
It never went in.
right,
They're pretty much
it was
invincible.
Like, you hit it.
It would be like
really hard.
It's like trying to harpoon someone in chainmail. Like
Dude,
you're lifting the thing out of the water by the gaff, and you can like see the point like pushing through its like soft center of its body, but like it's not actually. It's like maybe like trying to harpoon Stretch Armstrong or
It
like
was
some sort of.
probably one of the funniest killfish stories, like experiences of my
It
life.
was like an amorphous solid.
The fish wasn't quite heavy enough to like stay still when Ben threw the harpoon.
Yeah.
So what was happening was he was hitting it and with his force,
Pushing it away.
basically pushing the shark away, like
and then
2-3 feet.
You're holding the shark up with a gaff while I'm trying to harpoon it, and it's like neither of the sharpened points are like penetrating.
Our harpoon dart we sharpened our tip of our dart very sharp, and I haven't killed a lot of blue sharks because you don't kill them for tournaments usually, whatever. And come to find out, their skin is way different from all the other sharks. Like that you get, like softer, like the poor beagles and the threshers and stuff like that, where you could just punch a dart right into. This was ridiculous.
Yeah.
That I'm still to this day in awe about this.
You
hit it probably 10 times.
Yeah,
maybe
the only way I actually ended up getting the harpoon to stick was I just wedged it in the gills. Like,
that's basically all you ended
wazzled
up
it in
doing,
between
right.
the gills.
It was like
and then
back in the-
dart stayed in.
Back in the whaling days, it was what? Like they'd get in the dories, they'd dart the whale. The whale would, eventually surface, die, tire out, and then they would use basically like straight blades and just sit there and go
until it died.
That's what I'm picturing in my head.
That's pretty much exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So he finally sneaks the harpoon into its gill somehow, right? Now we're holding it barely with the harpoon. Now I'm trying to gaff it near the tail so we can get a tail rope on it. I must have gaffed it 50 times.
Right.
I'm gaffing this thing dude, our gaff is sharp. I mean, it's very sharp. And I'm hitting it and I'm hitting it and I'm hitting it. And I'm pulling up. I'm pulling up higher. The whole shark is coming out of the water.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I'm literally lifting the entire 80-pound shark out of the water with the tip of the gaff. And the gaff would not puncture the skin. The belly, the back, fucking fins. Excuse my language. Ridiculous. So anyways, we ended up getting a tail rope on it. We cut its head off. We gutted it, everything in the water.
Still biting at you.
Yeah. Put it immediately into a bag. Didn't touch the deck. Nothing.
Yeah, we actually gutted it and everything in the water.
Yeah.
And it's still...
It smelled like really old socks that you've worn 100
that
times.
you pissed in.
Right.
Yeah.
It was gross. So anyways, now we have a shark on board. And then we were like, all right, we just released a tuna. We got a shark. And now we're like, how do we catch other items?
We had actually got 3 sharks in that time frame. I think we had one.
We lost a few.
Yeah, we hooked one pretty quickly after getting back on the ball, and I remember it kind of charged the boat.
Right.
And then it was close to the side of the boat, and we weren't really mentally prepared yet to get it because it all happened so quickly.
Right.
And you're it was there, and we're oh, all right, is this the one you want? Is this a good blue shark?
Ben's like,
is this a good one?
Porgy?
And so, and then it got away and we were that's all right.
you guys harvested the perfect size blue shark.
It was perfect. So then we were like, all right, let's go to this we call this little spot Jurassic Park.
Yep.
It's it's on a high spot of this trench that's a little northeast of where we were tuna fishing. And set up the Rodan. Found a few marks. I think we caught a couple mud hake, and I'm all right, there's obviously nothing here. Bumped around a little bit, and then it started, and we were just fishing jigs and teasers. We were catching 15-pound cusk. We were catching 10-pound, at least 10-pound pollock. And we ended up
pretty good pollock.
Dude, it was great pollock fishing, and I don't know. We ended up bringing home probably 50 fish worth of fillets on top of a blue shark.
Yeah, it turned into a bonanza. Yeah.
That's a solid combo trip,
Dude,
right there.
solid. I think the only species we didn't catch was a haddock. We released cod, obviously.
Yeah, we released cod.
Redfish we caught. Cusk,
a bunch of redfish.
pollock, hake, a tuna, a shark. It's a good time.
And we got to the point where we were actually fishing in, I don't know, couple 100 feet of water, so bringing up these 10, 15, 20 pound fish from the bottom down there, everyone was smoked because they had fought 5, 6 sharks, a tuna, and the 2 people on the charter that day were all but done.
Yeah.
So Taylor and I were switching off, reeling
Playing
in
around.
fish, and we got to the point where they're half asleep up on the bow of the boat. I'm pretty sure the guy was seasick all day too.
I think at the end of the day, he started not feeling well. But I mean, he was probably exhausted.
Probably the
dude.
smell of the blue shark on the boat was
It started. Well, if you
If he
guys,
listens to this, he's gonna laugh.
oh yeah.
Because we were laughing all day about it. I'm like,
you
I don't
guys-
know. I still don't know how you eat it.
If you were at Jurassic Park, I remember it like kind of picked up. The wind picked up out
Yeah.
southwest a bit that
did.
day. That's probably when he got
We
seasick.
went home slow.
Yeah, that was
We actually
was
marked a few tuna chasing our stuff up.
right.
Yeah.
We were kind of getting to the point where Rodan was like barely able to hold
Yeah.
us. We're like, shit, we should have brought an anchor today, but
Yeah.
it was getting that point in the day where we had enough meat on deck that it
Didn't
had been
matter.
a successful adventure.
Yeah, it was hilarious. I'm just picturing how much blue shark meat he has now.
Yeah. It's a lot. Well, 40 pounds anyway.
I mean, it was probably like
80
a
pounds. 60.
mid-size Yeti full of blue shark meat.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and like you said, none of that meat actually touched the boat, but it had to be the next week and a half that
You still smelled like
yeah,
wafts of it.
You'd bleach cleaner and all the weird little cracks and stuff and crevices, and you would still like, you know, whether it was just in your mind or it was actually there, you could still smell.
I could smell it. It went away after.
Oh, yeah.
Some of it was definitely in our minds, though.
Yeah.
Like,
No, it was just jammed into your brain, like seriously, permanently.
Yep.
trying to think what
So
else.
that same. So the day before your blue shark bonanza, was out of the hand bite number 1 with
yes.
Mike.
So, like, what was it? 3 or 4 days prior, I kind of had.
A similar experience.
Yeah, we released a couple, and then it was like the end of the day, and we couldn't put a bait below like 60 feet pretty much all day because the dogfish just sucked.
Yeah. Dogfish are little sharks.
And
they were an extreme nuisance this year in comparison to last year.
Horrible. We marked a few fish that, like, wouldn't come up above like 80 feet. I'm like, I'm just gonna put a herring down at 80 feet for like the last 10 minutes of the day, and if it gets eaten by a dogfish, it gets eaten by a dogfish. And I put it down, and like 5 minutes goes by, and we just left one rod in the water, reeled everything in just like how we usually do, and we do one at a time and clear each rod.
Yeah.
And it went off, and we turned around, went to chase it. He sawed our anchor ball off. It
Oh, no.
went in, got caught in almost got caught in Mike's ball. Fish was a slob. It was like a 110 incher. Trying to think what else happened with that fight. I think we actually ended up just getting it black back, weird pinwheels, and I think he just chafed us off.
Yeah.
But we could have killed it. It was like one of those, took like 10 passes by the corner of the boat, and you're like,
Right.
okay, I would have thrown now, and then he just chafed us off.
Yeah, didn't get a chance to get it on the release hook,
Right.
but if it was a commercial day, most likely would have been able to harvest it.
Right.
So, for those of you that haven't fished with us, or if you haven't heard us talk about it, at the end of every trip, so tuna fishing is a waiting game. At the end of every trip, which is usually sometime between 1:30 and 3 o'clock, depending on how far we're fishing from shore, when we go to clear our lines, usually you're live bait fishing, so it's like basically bobber fishing. You have 2 floater baits out, and then you have a rod that's basically straight underneath the boat. So when we go to leave every day, we don't just reel everything in all at once and pack up and go. Like, we'll start the boat, get our tote ready for our anchor, if we're on traditional anchor, just kind of tidy up. Then we'll reel in 1 rod at a time, and we coil each leader and put each rod away separately before we move on to the next rod. So at this point in the season, dogfish were bad. You had that drop to the bottom bite a couple days before.
And
So-
that part in the tide was like right when we were.
Yeah, it was like
that's kind of the reason
lined
why
up.
you pushed it.
Exactly. So we were at exactly that point this day. This was the 24th of, let me see, bad checks. Yeah. Where's the Mike Murphy day? Tanga. Here, 25th of August. We're getting ready to leave. I take the rubber band off. I just put the floater rod. Like, we had like 5 130s out because the sharks were so bad. So we were able to rapid fire through leaders. So I just got the last rod put away. Everything's perfect. walk over the down rod, and we were just talking about it. We were like, you can't catch them if you don't have hooks in the water. OG's doing his whole speech. I take the tether off. So, you have some sort of drop. Take the tether off. I drop it. The bait drops, 6 feet. Slack comes out of the line, and I take one crank, and I'm like, fucking dogfish ate that already? Like, because I think I had adjusted the bait a little bit deeper. Like,
amazing with 5 feet.
Just before that.
Yeah.
And then the rod bent over. Fish went up the starboard side under the boat. Whole shit show, free spool. So we were like, that's awesome. Like, if you get one of those a year.
Yeah, one rod in the water.
Rod in the water, about to leave, out of the hand. It's like, it's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
The very next day, Taylor's blue shark harvesting day. Same, different spot, same exact time, same exact point in the process of leaving. Engines on, wind picked up. It's probably like 2 to 3s. We're like joking with Mike and Connor on the radio because it was so slow all day. We marked a couple, and the sharks were bad. And Dad's got like, when you do something well the day before and it's sick, Daddy gets that like extreme confidence. He's
It's
like,
gonna happen again.
Oh yeah, it can happen again. Absolutely happen again. So he's like, I'm like, oh yeah, it's fucking definitely gonna happen again. So same exact thing. Put the last rod away, and we had just marked a fish like 5 minutes before, like buried. Well, not buried, like not a worm mark. Like he was arced on the bottom, so he was swimming, doing something down there, feeding. Some herring were going through. So I left it. Like I cleared everything, and I just kind of walked around the boat for 5 minutes. And then we didn't mark shit. And I was like, all right. Went back, sat by the rod for, I don't know, when I went to move it. So what did I do? I was like, well, yes.
Well, you ended up marking another one on the bottom, right?
That's what it was. So the day before I got bit reeling up. Then this day I did all that. Then I came back, stood by the rod, took the tether off, dropped it all the way to the bottom, literally hit the bottom with the sinker. And then
But did you mark that fish again?
No.
So you marked them 5 minutes
I
before
marked them
this.
5 minutes before that.
Okay.
And dropped to the bottom, hit the bottom, 6 to 10.
With the weight.
With the weight, 6 to 10 cranks up. So doing the math of how we fish our bait,
Is
it was
literally
like
on the bottom.
literally on the fucking bottom.
Yeah.
And then the guys we were with was a returning crew that's had really good luck with us. Like they're awesome dudes and they understand giant fish and they're relaxing, hanging out, talking business and fun all day. So they're all watching me. Like everyone's quiet, just like staring at this whole process.
Because nothing happened all day.
Because nothing happened all day, and they knew it happened the day before.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I just see the rod tip go, dun dun. I'm like, dogfish? And I take 2 cranks, and it just lays right over again. Same thing, up the same side of the boat, took the same direction up onto the bank. And I was stoked. I was like, I cannot fucking believe that just happened again. But those are probably two of my favorite bites all year. My theory on the dropping, and I talked to Jeff about this.
Don't hit the table as much.
Sorry.
Because you're going to make
My
tapping.
theory on the dropping was there was like a thin layer of herring on the bottom and marked them on the bottom. And like, think about how many times, like when we're bass fishing on pogies and you snag a pogie, your first, like, obviously you can't snag drop, but when we were able to, and you still see it, you're snagging bait, you're going to see it. Snag a bait, and then it either gets chased or attacked immediately as soon as that pocket's in the bait school. Yeah. So it's the same thing on the bottom. If that herring's carpeted and they're just cruising, just grabbing scoops whenever they want, it's not balled and tight because there's just so much spread out bait, hits the bottom, just basically creates like a hole. And then
The weight does at least.
The weight does at least. And then your bait's there for a few moments anyways, sitting there by himself.
Yeah.
Create a little reaction.
I know that they're
there.
doing that in Chatham a lot.
Yeah.
They're basically like, if the fish aren't streaking up and eating their bait that's still close to the bottom, they're basically just dropping the weight to the bottom. Sometimes they're leaving their weight on the bottom,
Yeah.
with live mackerel and the thing's doing whatever it's doing.
Yep.
But no, it's tough to do in the bank. Well, it's tough to do anywhere that there's critters. When the dogs show up, it's just a totally different game. We're having to anchor a little bit deeper sometimes. We're having to raise our baits higher where we don't really want them sometimes. I mean, how many days this year did you like mark a pack of fish and you're like, oh, we're gonna get a bite, and then nothing happens, and then you're like, all right, let's just check our stuff, and you check your stuff and it's like
Yeah, it looks like they've been
there's
through
like
the wood
one
chipper.
scale left on a hook.
Yeah.
You're like, seriously right now?
Yeah, it totally messes it up. Mung and dogs, I would say, were our two biggest challenges this year. Our water temperature was amazing. Our water clarity was amazing. Our bait was amazing.
Yeah.
Probably getting close to this time in the season too. End of August, the blue sharks were terrible.
Oh, it was bad.
Oh yeah, the big sharks.
So I'm getting to like the last weekend in August is when. So it was good, legit. So if
fishing
if
was good.
Justin is listening to this, we had a bite. We literally had a bite or two almost every day in August until he came.
Yeah.
Then he came.
I actually said it the day before. I said, oh man, the curse of Justin's going to continue tomorrow.
I mean, he's not cursed because he's caught something.
I know.
He has
It just
great
feels like
days.
he's cursed.
I know.
I don't know
because
why.
We want it so bad for him.
I know.
So the 28th, very bad sharks. That was our worst shark day. Was when he was on the boat. Grease calm.
It was horrible.
We caught like 10 blue sharks. Then we got into September. More into August.
went
Let's
through
see
so
here.
much fluorocarbon.
Fish calamari.
There was one day specifically where I think it was from like
Oh, yeah.
7 a.m. until probably 1 o'clock, like the whole day, just crimping fresh leaders, cutting back hooks, crimping on. It was like shark after shark after shark. And then, the end of the day, it kind of like was getting down in that calm down in the tide. We had like one herring left in the well. Brian's, it was sort of a holy, Hail Mary at the end of it. But, we had a little pocket. We had marked a fish coming through, what we thought was a fish, and Bri drops it down a herring into there. And maybe, 30, 45 seconds after the bait like kind of settles in, we hook up on that and went off. It ended up being like a 90 something incher.
It was a fun fight, though. I remember that one was like big runs and like kind of all over the surface.
Yep.
And the two brothers were jacked.
Yeah,
Like, they were so pumped. It was awesome. Like,
love
they were
customers
smiling,
like that.
into it, like listening to everything. And then you really didn't have to coach them much at all after the first run.
Well, and they had had a slow trip early August. That was like a new moon trip. And, they were very good about it. They just kind of like relaxed on the boat. And, so now here we are again. This time they got to fight a bunch of sharks, but like, they're like, well, we're here for tuna. And we ended up getting one with them.
It's a grind though with those big sharks.
Yeah, that like week period of bad sharks, we probably didn't even make any money because of all the fluorocarbon hooks that we went through.
Yeah, I mean, we were going
We
through
broke even every day.
minimum 6 fluorocarbon liters a day.
Yeah, 20-foot liters. Do the math. Then it kind of changed around for a little bit. So then it was Sharknado. We decided to move. We moved to a different spot. Well, actually, right before going into September season / opener, we kind of, parted ways and covered as much of the edge as we possibly could with the two boats just to find whatever pocket of fish was still there.
Right.
We found that pocket of fish. Actually, you guys did. You marked them. You were down on the corner, had some sharks, marked fish. We stayed up at Middlebank.
Oh, dude, that day sucked.
And then we literally showed up for the tide change, Rodan down, and we had huge baits and got our second rod in the water and went off.
Yep.
Is that okay? Yeah.
That was the 29th of August.
Yes. Yeah, we hooked up first thing in the morning.
Lost it, right?
Lost it. That was with Matt Marino.
Yeah.
And then we hooked another one after you guys left.
Yep.
And we marked probably 30.
Yeah, right. Because we were like, we showed up, hooked our fish, caught it, and then we're like kind of just doing the flyby, saying hi. And we threw you guys a bucket of baits, I think.
I changed the down rod bait out and then ended up eating a mackerel.
Yeah, we barely like had gotten out of sight of you guys, and we hear OG over the radio. We're on.
Yeah.
We're like, no shit.
And then
Oh, those are all huge fish.
The next
That
day,
week. That
the
was a
next
big
they were
day,
all
we,
big fish.
we had big plans of what we knew we were gonna do. We were gonna go get those big baits again and come back to the same area. And
Yep.
it turned out being, I think it was a snotty day the next day.
Yep.
And
we had a wind day. Yeah, it was like a couple days of fish. Opening commercial, goodbye. We didn't fish this day, I don't think. Or we didn't get them that day on the opener.
That was the day that we had big plans. We were going to go get those big herring again.
Right.
And we're like, oh, yeah, it's going to be good. And then it was like 4-footers, and it was all we could do just to like get into our spot, a spot on the edge. And, you know, we're like, normally we'll try and kind of move around in the mornings and find the best little bottom bait and try and jig some bait. And we just hopped on anchor and got bait where we were. And
Let's talk about bait for a sec.
yeah.
Yeah. We're about to transition to pogies because then we started fishing the bay.
So size herring and size mackerel this year were very interesting. Like I felt like there was waves that they were targeting those jumbo mackerel. And then there was those waves that they're obviously a big herring almost always works, but I feel like there was waves that they were on the little herring.
Yeah.
And like you'd go through your big baits, you weren't getting bites, and then you're like, oh, I guess I'll put this thing on.
Yeah.
And you put it on, and it was like it seemed like insta bites on a few of those.
I also think a lot of it was the dogs weren't eating the small herrings too.
As much.
So you put those big herring on, they get, tired
big
in the
profile.
current, and then their belly gets bitten out, when they're trying to escape. And then the little herrings are either there or they're not there. But for the most part, they could evade the dogfish better, I thought. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of the same thing with the mackerel too. I think the like real big, heavy, like, IGFA
slow.
record mackerel are a little slower, and they were getting dogged out a little easier.
Yeah.
You get those like nice thick bodied, mid-sized mackerel, and they seem to be a little bit more evasive for the dogfish.
So I thought there was times that the fish were like totally keyed in. I think obviously they're keyed in on certain species of bait sometimes. And I think wherever you're fishing, like the southern edge of the bank, the herring were definitely smaller than the middle and northern edge of the bank. And I felt like the middle and northern edge of the bank, you kind of needed big baits to get bites. And like, obviously, yeah, you could get bites to the southern edge of the bank, but I think they were so keyed in on like the belly profile of those smaller herring and stuff that like, I don't think they cared whether it was a mackerel or a herring, but they're looking for those small baits.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like there was definitely periods of time where it was like the day before, you're like, geez, if only we could have had, 2 herring the day before.
Right.
Because everyone seemed to get bit on herring. The next day you show up and you're like, oh, we got a, perfect well full of perfect herring. And then
it's all mackerels.
Then the boat next year, they're like, yeah, what'd you get them on? Oh, it was, whatever, 60-foot mackerel. You're like, what the heck? Now we have 30 herring in the live well. Yesterday it was nothing but herring on the bites. And
it was weird.
There was definitely that weird flip flop. It felt like whatever of the 2 main species, if it was mackerel or herring, whichever one was harder to get that day, definitely seemed to be a spell, midsummer where.
Well, our spread definitely was way more mackerel this year than last year.
Yeah.
And I think we did the best fishing, the 2 max on the floaters and the herring and the down rod.
Yeah.
For a big chunk of the year. And last year it was almost always a mackerel and 2 herring.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we kind of touched on it earlier too, but so that small fish herd came in early season.
Yeah.
And just before then, it was like early June, and there was like massive piles of herring, where we were fishing.
Yeah.
And it seemed like you were saying once those small fish came and they blew up that bait, kind of disappeared.
Then they went to mackerels.
And it was definitely harder. It took a good while before those big mounds of herring kind of like stabilized again and like reformed.
Right. Yeah.
Well, they showed back up on that day with the guy from Florida.
Yeah. Yep.
Remember that? When Weber went up like south of what we call Middlebank, south of the lanes, basically.
Yeah.
And he's like, it looks really good up there. Remember, it was this raining jumbo herring, like as far as you could see.
Yeah.
I've never had herring on the surface in the middle of the day, all like 1-pounders.
Yeah.
They were huge.
So then that was August. Then into September, like right at the beginning of September is when everything kind of all started transitioning. So then the fish were really keyed in on the pogies, like way down the bay. And there was still great mackerel and herring. Like there was kind of 2 bites going on for a while. Like the bank was definitely more of like if you were there every day, you were going to get a bite. and the bay was just kind of, there's so many effing fish, you're probably going to get a bite.
Right.
You know? So the 4th, that was a fun morning. Like simultaneously, you and I text each other, like, it was within 5 minutes and we were like 12 miles, 16 miles apart. We're like, just wrapped them up at the same exact time.
Yeah, you went to the bay, we went onto the bank.
Yep.
We actually lost one right before that. That fish sucked. That was a 109-inch fish. That fish was the first of the year that we had to put 2 harpoons in. We ended up getting like a blackback shot, a true going away, full back down blackback shot in them. And like right before I did, I'm like, oh, if we can get a harpoon in him, it'll definitely slow him down, right? we back up on this thing, and it's like swimming away, paddling. I get him in like the back third, like right in the back, but the back third of the fish because he was like swimming away. And I'm like, nice. And he takes 150 yards. It took almost our entire basket on the surface with his back out of the water. Ugh. And the harpoon like skipping across the surface. And I'm like, oh my God. We're backing down as fast as we can with the dart line and the rod, still fighting him, get him back. Eventually he pinwheels up. There's like, we had to unwrap the basket from the main line like 20 times. He eventually comes up. It was still wrapped like 10 times. And I got like a deep dart throw at him. And we stuck him again. And come to find out, my second throw was like 1.5 feet from the first throw. So now we're still...
so weird how that happens.
Dude, so weird. Yeah. So we ended up like pulling him from the same direction. And then it got so twisted with pinwheels that we're now creating like this triangle. Like we have the ropes at the lower half of the back half of the fish and the hook in the corner of his mouth. And we're pulling him in like a sheet of plywood sideways. And I'm like scared to post the video because there's so many fucking tangles and knots. I got 2 harpoon lines, the main line of the rod, and it was so twisted up we couldn't get the leader into the rod. So now I'm basically wiring a fish, a 109-inch fish, wiring it with gloves on with dart lines on either side of me. It was a disaster.
They're just big, heavy animals.
Yep. Yeah. That was probably definitely the meanest. That one ate a mackerel at like 80 feet, but that was probably the meanest fish of the year for me anyways, to the point that like OG's basically saying just cut the thing off. That's what that's like it was his mentality, because the whole process started out like a dart in him in 15 minutes and then it lasted like 2 hours.
Right.
2 hours of dart lines
and stuff.
Oh, it's just a mess. It's no matter which way you slice it.
But anyways, that was that day.
Labor Day, we caught our heaviest fish, second heaviest fish. That was 107, 688, gilled and gutted.
What's your theory on the whole show up to the bay and immediately go off deal?
Just how the bay works.
Yeah. I don't know. It's definitely like a first, like if you have good baits, like not just like pogies, you know, you have good pogies. Good pogies or like big mackerel, you know, big still greenback mackerel. I think that's
mackerel. A profile thing.
I do too.
Yeah.
It was like you're pretty much getting a bite within an hour of the sun rising is what we discovered, you know, as long as you were kind of, you had like a half mile all the way around you.
Yeah. So it definitely seemed like it was a huge advantage having your bait before going into the bay. Like
1,000,000%. And getting there in the dark. Getting there in the dark. And the bait was like, that's when the bait was still bunched like mid-water when it was good. So it was easier to mark them as you pulled in. So, you know, you mark a bait ball. Maybe one would have a fish on it. And you're like, all right, I'm going to get downdrift to this and just come right through it. And then as the day went on, the sun got higher. It all pinned to the bottom.
For sure.
And it's harder to mark it when it's really tight to the bottom in there because you don't have like, there's like no, it almost seems like there's no difference in the density between the bait and the bottom in the bay because it's mud.
Yep.
And then the bank is such hard bottom. It's easy to see, easier to distinguish bottom bait from the bottom if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're sitting on a pile of bait, it just looks like false bottom. And then like every now and then you'll come off and you'll see a little ledge and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, we're sitting on, a hockey puck. We were kind of calling
Yeah,
it a bait,
exactly.
where you just have this, maybe a 5-foot pile that's just tight hugging the bottom. You got like all solid red bait, and then but like you're saying, the bottom density is also like red, at least on our machine. It's
Yeah.
like just doesn't, you don't see any line where, it differentiates the bottom
Exactly.
from the bait. It's just a tight wad.
Yep.
Yeah, it's hard to mark that.
But it was fun. I think we did 6 or 7.
We don't go on the bait much.
Yeah, we've talked about that. We did like 6 or 7 trips, and I think we had 5 or 6 bites in there.
So for those that don't fish up near us, the bay, if you were to draw a line between basically the tip of Cape Cod to, I'm going to say, Scituate, which is kind of in the middle of Massachusetts on the eastern side, and then all the way down, like in that whole basically area to the arm, like all the way down inside there, all the way as close as like the Cape Cod Canal.
Yeah.
There were just fish randomly through that whole area. And there was definitely some spots that seemed like there was bigger groups of fish that came through feeding on the pogies, but
And-
pretty much you can get a bite anywhere in there.
It seemed like those fish were swirling around in there. So yeah, we may have had luck early in the morning where we were catching them. But at different points in the day, we also found if you didn't hook up super early in that area in the morning, you might not be getting a bite for quite a while.
Yeah.
You might move around and you find more bait, and you'd see throughout the day you'd hear like reports from other
clusters
people,
of bites.
little clusters of bites where, maybe those little wolf packs started migrating through and moving over to different parts.
I think it was all just, guys have different theories, and there's guys that, what do you got going there?
Jeff Weber, I think he's here right now.
Yeah, he's going for a walk.
Just
in the woods.
texted and he said, he's trying to call and he was going to go on speakerphone. And he said, I was just making sure that I could poop downstairs. And he goes, that sounded weird. Not just downstairs, in the toilet.
Oh. But this place is becoming the compound. Everyone wants to hang out. It's funny. So yeah, the bay was great. Then we went back to the bank. We were fishing, basically like an 8-mile stretch of edge, north to south, kind of depending on where the bait was and how everything was going. Then we went on a decent run.
This was the beginning of September.
Yeah. This was September like 12th through the 18th week. And then 106 Line Shy was canceled. Oh, on the 19th we caught cleft lip.
Right.
19th of September.
September.
Yeah.
We did
that was a weird one.
you
Talk
took
about that day.
You took the day off.
Yep.
Ben and I double mated with OG, and we got to our spot and we got all the lines out, and then Ben said, we're on. It happened pretty fast.
Was that the day that we had a lot of seasick people? And it was like super quick. We had one guy who was still holding it together. Yeah.
But basically,
First thing in the morning. It's amazing how seasick you
I just think it's the dark. Like, you're going out in the dark and you get all discombobulated and you can't see the horizon. And then like there's anxiety. Like you go from like, I don't feel good to like, oh shit, now I'm in like a new experience. Then your anxiety gets high and then you start feeling nauseous.
Yeah, it's weird too if you're not like waking up in the dark every day and getting on a school bus that's, going through a washing machine. It's a weird feeling if you're not like used to that,
Yep.
I think a lot of people, like we've, obviously we've met some great people through doing the podcast and booked some trips and stuff, but expect to be in the dark for a while in the morning.
Yeah, I mean 2 hours.
Yeah.
2 hours in the dark, a lot.
So anyway, down rod goes off, Ben comes tight, everything's like perfect. Fish eats the down, like goes between the two floaters, and like everything's just money. We're backing down and the fish took a savage run and then he just stopped. And then we backed down. Then we got down sea of him, and he came up tail wrapped, and Ben darted him, and I already had the other harpoon in my hand, so why not put another one in him? And they're like both next to each other, which it's crazy. I think your eye just keys in on
It's
that
strange.
like white spot of
get
meat
it.
where the dart was or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the fish, it was like a junk. I mean, they're all awesome animals, but like it was in comparison quality wise, it was like a junk long line fish or like a junk offshore fish. This thing was just like big head, kind of skinny body. And then when we put him on the boat, actually no, when we went to swim him, we're like the fight was so weird. Should we swim him? And Dad's just like, I don't give a shit what you do. Like he's just at the wheel. He doesn't give a shit.
We're like, we'll put the swim hook in him. And I think you're like holding him, and I'm like trying to put it in. I'm like, what side do I put this thing on? And you're like, that doesn't look right. Like, I think you have it in the wrong side. And like, we didn't really know what was
we're
going
like, did
on
we
yet.
split the lip like while we were gaffing him? Like, what the hell happened? So we just throw the swim hook in him and like pick a side, and I'll explain what was wrong with him once we get him on the boat. But picked a side, and he swam, and he was just like, I don't know. He didn't really do anything. He was just kind of like bananaed and not really swimming. Just like, sometimes you get one like that. And we put him on the boat, and his bottom jaw was perfectly split into two pieces.
Yeah.
And his teeth had regrown like he still had a tongue, but his tongue was only on one side.
I thought he had two tongues, no?
I can't remember if it was one off to one side, if his tongue
Definitely had two lower jaws.
Yeah, and he had two, like Ben could tuck his hand in there, and it was like no.
You probably like that.
No,
Yeah.
like his whole hand
nice.
go up.
Something you want to take home, Ben?
Exactly. But it was
What's
weird.
better than one mouth? Two mouths.
Holy crap! But I figured
His
like,
teeth are pretty well worn down too. So.
Oh, man.
yeah, he's experienced. My theory was like he was, who knows? Like he could have eaten a sabiki rig at some point, and when he got dehooked or came through the crucifier on a commercial boat, it tore off, or like
as a baby.
he was fought in a long line, but like it didn't look like a recent injury. Like it looked like he was either a birth defect or
I think it was a birth
regrew.
defect. When you sent me that picture, it was too perfect.
Yeah,
It was perfectly in the middle, the same size jaws, everything,
yeah.
lower jaws.
Yeah, whatever it was like 100%
it's like a cleft lip,
healed.
kind of.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was like an open wound by any means.
For sure. This episode is brought to you by Rodan Marine Systems. This past season, we partnered up with Rodan Marine. They produce extremely high quality trolling motors / GPS anchors. We have a 30-foot center console. It's actually a 2801 Parker with a bracket, considered a large center console. And we do a ton of anchor fishing. We fish on anchor a lot inshore in the rivers and inshore waters around the South Shore of Massachusetts and throughout Cape Cod Bay. Live bait fishing for striped bass. We also fish on anchor a ton, I would say 75% of the time while we're offshore tuna fishing, live bait fishing, we're on anchor. So having the ability to quickly stop the boat, deploy an anchor, and not have to use, 400 feet of anchor line and deal with swing on a tide change and not easily being able to reposition, it's kind of a no-brainer for us to reach out to Rodan and see if they would be interested in putting one of their trolling motors on our boats. We've been fortunate enough to use Rodans down in Florida with a couple of our buddies who have actually been on the podcast, Jason Stock and Dave White, and we were extremely impressed by them when we used them on their boats, and their boats are of comparable size to ours. So we ended up getting, thanks to Rodan, we ended up getting their 36-volt HD GPS trolling motor with the 96-inch shaft. It seemed to be the right size, right fit for our center console, and the thing is just unbelievable. We were able to put it into the test in a variety of sea conditions. We found that, anything, a consistent 2 to 4 foot chop. As long as the wind isn't super, super gusty, we were not moving. Like our position did not change throughout the day, throughout a tide change. It really was or is truly incredible. So just a couple of things. We gave this thing a full season before, we wanted to give a testimonial for it. There's a lot of different, crazy products on the market. Technology's come a long way, and, we really want to see if this thing could hold up to our charter season and the elements up here in the Northeast. And it really impressed us. So we installed the motor ourselves, just Taylor, myself, and our new mate, Ben, kid that worked for us in the 2022 season and hopefully will be with us for years to come. We installed it ourselves. We decided to go with a 36 volt lithium battery. It's lighter than lead acid. It requires less storage space. You don't need as many batteries. And we're actually able to get 12 plus hours of runtime before we needed to charge, which is crazy. We charge every day after each trip, but if we had doubles or double inshore trips or anything like that, we really didn't have to worry about it. So some of the situations and really benefits that we found of using a spot lock trolling motor, GPS anchor, trolling motor, specifically Rodan, where tide changes, there's no swing. So if you have several hundred feet of anchor line and you're positioned on a piece of bottom, there's really no movement. There is no movement at all on a tide change, so you can stay in the sweet spot for longer. The other thing is wind against tide. So when they're opposite each other, it's hard to send baits out. We have little tricks that we use to try to get baits away from the boat in that situation, but it's often difficult, and many times you're only fishing or able to fish one rod. So with the trolling motor anchor, on the center console, we could still fish 3 rods off the bow and have a full spread, and it helped us get more bites. Absolutely. Both inshore and offshore. The support, I think, is the most impressive and most important thing with Rodan. Saltwater is a harsh environment. Charter fishing, you're beating your equipment up pretty good. I'm sure any other charter captains listening to this can attest to that. Everything breaks, and you got to fix a lot of stuff yourself in order to keep going through the season and keep going trip to trip. So if we ever had an issue, which we had a couple of minor wear and tear issues, Rodan overnighted us parts. Their support is unbelievable. Easy to fix and modify things on your own. Just a great product. So we wanted to give a honest testimonial of the product, and we're really impressed. So if you're interested in adding a Rodan to your boat for this next season, you can visit rodanmarine.com, and you'll see the entire lineup of their trolling motors and GPS anchors, all different shaft lengths, voltages, and we think you'll be impressed. So check them out. It will definitely be a game changer in the way that you fish on anchor.
So
then
yeah,
the next day,
where are we at now? First week of September?
Week of September 19th. Mm-hmm. Then Peaked Hill kind of started going off. We got some small fish.
Yep.
And then
missed some fish.
We missed some fish. Like they were biting real good all day one day. Then it was a morning bite the next day. We missed a bite that day. Then we had 4 days of weather.
Yes.
We really had great. That's one thing we haven't talked about. Our weather this year, especially early season through till end of September.
Yeah.
We were busy. Like we barely had days off. The weather was perfect pretty much. At least fishable every day.
I can remember like before September, there was probably 1 or 2 days that the little boat were like, we'll probably cancel that.
Yeah.
And the big boat still fished on those days. I don't think there was a day where it might have been 2 two days over the summer where the big boat didn't go because of weather.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
we
maybe a
ended
few
up
more than that.
I think we went out fishing, several of those days still.
Yeah, commercial wise, and
I hung a couple more stands during that bad weather window. And then we had to cancel PEI. That was the hurricane. That's what that was. So yeah, we had PEI all scheduled, ready to rock and roll. And then at the same time, so they got hit by a hurricane, pretty damn hard. Lost power. It was really like utility damage. Like the harbors took quite a significant hit too, trees down. So we couldn't go up there with no power and, trying to accommodate 10 people and all that. So we pushed everyone for the most part off to the next year.
Pretty sure you were saying they even they pulled their boats too, and the harbor wasn't even like deemed safe to put the boats back in yet.
There was metal from like the buildings and stuff down there, and a whole bunch of the the bulkhead like parted away, and it was kind of a mess. So they're all back and squared away, and they ended up having a great rally at the end of the season, which is awesome for those guys. But at the same time, Florida got hit as well, and it was just weird. I mean, we obviously have really close friends in both spots, and they both got hit by hurricanes at the exact same time.
it was wild. Before we go into like the next, when the fish really started showing up after the hurricane, one thing that we do pretty much every day is we save a lot of our mackerel that we catch in the morning and just throw them in a bucket, and we just leave them on the boat in case something weird happens. Like there are days throughout the year, it doesn't happen many times for us, but there's always a handful of days that somehow we have either fish respond to chum, or we're in a position that like we want some bait to throw over the side.
Yeah.
And it usually doesn't happen until the fall. Once the sharks start to dissipate a little bit and we're fishing deeper water sometimes.
And the fish are beginning to migrate out, and they're kind of willing to eat anything to pack on weight.
So once the storm came through, or one of the storms, we had that really good short fish day again.
September 30th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got him in the chum. Like, it was sick.
We went 10 for 12.
Yeah. And we got small ones in the chum. We were marking giants. We, for some reason, didn't hook a giant. Don't know why. But it was like the minute we got there, Brian put a rod in, and it was immediately eaten out of your hands.
Yeah.
And we were throwing some chum while we were like putting more rods out, and we almost tripled up. And then a couple more doubles, and it was just sick. And we would just we were marking packs of small ones and then single giants, and you mark a pack and it's like, all right, they're at 40 feet. They should eat the 40-foot bait, and then 40-foot bait goes down, We had a few that we were just throwing whole baits in, and they just kept streaking, and it was good to see, I wish we could do that year round, but there's just so much bait on the bank specifically that they don't need the dead bait,
Yeah. And then October was pretty awesome. And we had some weather, like we had a week and a half of weather, end of September and
Charter
October. Charter weather. Like it was, some days were still probably fishable, but it was kind of a little break. And then October 6th is when we had a really good stretch of weather for a while. Fished the bank. Got a 77-incher.
In a short.
Suck off bite. Fished the northern part of the wall. Hooked up at 9 o'clock. 95-incher.
And it seemed
Oh, that was the Sleepy Kids trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to tell that story or not.
No, that was just the Sleepy Kids trip.
Yeah.
It seemed like though, so like from like pretty much the time like that southeast Peaked Hill kind of thing started going, it was kind of like always there a bit.
Yeah, it stayed there.
And it was sort of here a day, gone a day. You couldn't necessarily go to the same spot. So like you're saying, we did end up,
Bouncing
back
a
at the
little
bank, and depending on the day, and just kind of feeling around, and we kind of did hop around quite a bit at that, getting into the later season.
Yep. We also like to just have a pulse on what's going on there too.
It was tough to get giants there.
Yeah.
Right.
So like the kill days, we didn't really want to go there on a kill day. So we were going back and forth so much.
And then,
go ahead.
Sorry. On the 11th, that was a magical day. So we had a full squad. It was like a company outing. One of the guys was actually local and fished on another local tuna boat. Kind of weekend fishing and stuff. And we went to the southeast corner. Like we went to, like Taylor was saying, we went to the bank for a little bit. Ben was saying we bounced around. Then it started becoming really consistent there. Right. So we showed up. We went back to where it was a closed day, Tuesday. So we went back to where we caught the small fish a couple days prior. And there was absolutely, like, I've never not, like, this was the slowest drift I think I've ever experienced.
It was grease calm.
It was flat calm. Yeah. And we're at Peaked Hills.
Yeah, we're east, where you're in the Atlantic.
Yeah,
Ocean.
like you're
There's
like
nothing sheltering.
There should be some current coming either way around the tip of the Cape. There was nothing.
That's so strange.
Zero tide at all. We walked on our first drift. We just sat in the same exact spot on the same raft of shear waters and just walked our rods around the boat for like an hour to 2 hours.
Yeah, that morning was rough with getting baits out. Like just when you'd think they were good, they would start like swirling in, and we must have done 5-6 revolutions of rods
it was
around.
Brutal. And we were just making the best of it. The guys were having a good time, and then Frank was out there too. He went a little bit deeper. We set up in like kind of up shallow on the shelf, and he went off the edge and saw a couple fish, and then it didn't really look great. Like there was it looked good. Like there were birds spread out everywhere, but you could tell they'd all just fed at sunrise. Like we were getting there as it was petering out. And then we were like, all right, let's attempt to fish some structure, like just some numbers that we've, fished before. Frank already had that idea and went to that, basically like right to the nipple in the corner and got like 1-2 rods in the water and hooked up, and it was like a 100-incher. He's like, oh yeah, get over here. We just hooked up, and he's the only boat. So we steam up there, and as I'm steaming up there, I'm just marking giant on the screen. Probably marked like 5 or 6 fish on the screen as we were heading up to him. And then I stopped marking for like a quarter mile and just, got on the drift and, sent it right through those marks. And we got right to those marks, and it was just like spaghetti on the screen. Like the fish just were coming up, looking at the baits, like not eating the baits. Started throwing a few whole mackerel in the water, and they started coming higher and higher and higher. And then finally we had them at like 60 feet. They didn't want any leaded baits. I think we had like a 100-foot bait and the far floater out. And they were at like 120 to like 90, and then we started throwing chum, and they started coming up to like 60
we were still
feet.
Struggling because there was still such little current, even though after we had moved, that we had that. We were up on the bow with the rod, and we were getting the spread going because the bait still didn't want to go out. So we had like 2 balloons like 60 feet within like 50, 60 feet of the boat, and just like kind of meandering in whatever direction they want to go.
And we're just like watching the screen. I'm watching Ben. I'm watching his floater, watching the screen, watching Ben, watching the floater. Then all of a sudden you see it happen. It's like, we're on. Yep. We're like, all right, this is going to be a good day. Yep. So we get that fish. He was like 100 inches. We get back up on the drift.
That was the first bow rod holder fish of the year.
Yeah, it was sick.
It's kind of a weird experience hooking up on the bow, at least on Fortuna, because like you're like, well, I'm here now. Like, I hope everything's going well on the back of the boat. Like, I don't know what's happening back there, but like, I don't know. There's a tuna up here, and like,
it was sick.
Communications. You almost need like sport fish radios so you can communicate
headsets.
at that. Yeah.
If you imagine Dad had a headset,
I would die.
Oh my god!
The stuff that he would say through that thing.
So we got that one. Get back up on the drift. Same thing, like marked all the way up, going back up drift after fighting. Get back on the drift. Get 3 rods in the water. Throw some chum. We're on again. We ended up having 5 bites. We got a 100-incher, an 85-incher, and then Then the fish all were like hanging at like 90 feet and like still looking at our baits, not eating our floaters. Our mackerel were on the floaters. And I had one tiny herring. And actually we had a few tiny. We had good bait. We stopped at the bank on the way. We had some decent herring. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna put a herring on the down rod at 90 feet and see if we get one more bite. So I put a herring on the down rod at 90 feet. Fish is looking at it, streaking, looking at it. And then it was grease calm. So I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? And there was no current. Like everything was straight down. I probably didn't even need a lead on anything. And reeled it up, pulled the lead off. So I had I pulled the bait from 90. It was probably sitting at like 30 feet, 40 feet when I pulled the lead off. And then just started free lining them down. And the fish, as soon as the weight came off, they broke 90 feet and came up and ate it right out of my hand.
Nuts.
Crazy. That day was cool. And then the next day was a commercial day. We had Costa Joe.
We're like, oh yeah, we'll go right back there. We know where the fish are now.
Crush it.
And there were, when we got there,
Always somebody you know.
when we got there, said guy that fishes on the tuna boat was within 50 yards of that exact same spot.
Yeah.
And then there was probably 70 boats there.
Yeah, it was nuts.
And there was a quick snap more towards the beach in the morning, like a pretty good bite. Like I would say between 20 and 40 bites, something like that.
Yeah, out of like 80 boats.
Yeah.
It's like 50%.
And then we just rotted all day. I mean, it was a nice day, grease calm. The dolphins and stuff were awesome that day. Getting to see the bycatch on the dragger that day was cool.
That was so frustrating.
Yeah, that was one of those days where you're like, you know, it was horseshoes and hand grenades. You know, you zig when you feel like maybe you should have zagged.
We started on a drift,
hindsight.
felt like we were too deep. Everyone just inside of us was hooking up. So then we like pull everything in. We set up. A couple more guys hook up in there around us. And then a few of the guys were annoyed with the crowd. So they went out where we just were.
On to
set
the
up,
drift we
and
were
then
on.
they all went off.
Yeah.
And we didn't. And I'm like,
Yeah.
And then we went back out and still didn't go off.
Yeah, then another guy shows up, you know, right as we had moved out, kind of moves in between us and where we were sitting and like where we would have drifted, and immediately goes off where it's like, what the heck?
Yeah. It's one of those days.
Finally we get a bite midday. We saw there was a couple tuna busting out of the water behind us, and we go off and we're like, wait a minute. This isn't a tuna. This is a big thresher shark.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
What the heck?
Right when the tunas are crashing, our bait basically in them.
There were a lot of threshers this year. I think we got like at least half a dozen of them. So that went on. We had a couple weather days. Went back to the bank.
No, we're in mid-October.
Now we're mid-October. The 16th, we had two. Each boat had a fish that day. That was a double dart shit show on the little boat, and that's when they started getting like real tough. I feel like those fish at the end of October were just hard fighting fish.
Yeah, big fish.
Yeah, that fish, the double dart fish, was the one that it was like pinwheeling off of, you know, every boat right in the little spot where we're sitting, and, you know, we're beelining. I remember beelining at this other center console, like full speed, like chasing down this fish, and it's going right for their anchor line. And we're like, you gotta drop off your ball, you gotta drop off, like close enough that you really didn't even have to yell, but you know, emotions run hot in the moment. And as soon as the fish would have been like swimming,
like he was
under
like
the anchor,
10 feet from the boat.
yeah, like we were like close enough that you could practically shake hands with the guy. The fish just turns 90 degrees and starts going towards the next guy's anchor.
Towards you.
My anchor.
And actually, the best part about that whole hookup, which I totally forgot about, you were just
put the fish on the boat.
You just put the fish on the boat, and then as you're like about to,
we saw you hook up, and you were
hook up, and then you dragged your anchor away from us.
Yeah,
right. Remember
so basically, I was like, I'm gonna just pull it and get it out of the way. But I'm like, if I pull it, my line's just gonna stay there. And then all of a sudden, I made the last, like it was a split-second decision. I'm like, you know what? Keep it cleared off. And I basically just drove up tide and brought our whole anchor setup way away. And you would 100% went through our anchor.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you would have went through our anchor again.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think you came back down through or something.
The fish went Up would have run into your anchor, but you pulled it out of the way. Hockey stopped at that other guy and then went back at
Down
you
the fleet.
as you were like coming, like
Right.
about to haul your anchor. Then you just came tight and sat there for a little while.
Yeah, and you ended up killing it like 100 feet from our boat.
I think we got our first harpoon in it as we're like we're like steaming towards you. We got the thing up black back up at the bow, and we got like a driving forward kind of black back dart shot on the thing, and the thing sounds back down.
No, I tail gaffed it. The thing was stunned.
Oh, yeah, it's
the thing
stunned.
was stunned,
And
and,
he
I
tail
ran
gaffed
up
it.
and tail gaffed it, and the thing.
Exploded.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
I-
kind of thought it died because we like pulled it back up.
Yeah, it was like
and
just
then-
kind of like peck fins out like this. I'm like, oh, he smoked.
No.
So he was like almost looked dead still. I thought he spined him.
Yeah.
So as soon as I hit him with the gaff, he had a full head of steam all the way down. Just kicked the
Right.
gaff out of him. And the white water,
Soaked the whole
oh,
boat.
the entire boat was wet.
Yeah.
Nope.
And then we darted him again. And then we got into the same predicament as you on that fish you were talking about because we were
Yeah.
wrapped like 40 times. Then the swivels just jammed at the rod tip. So we just abandoned the rod. I just grabbed the leader, and then he had one dart line, customer had the other dart line, and we were just like a tangled, rat's
Yeah.
nest.
It is nice though having like all that shit in him.
Yeah.
You feel pretty confident that he's gonna come in.
Like if it goes south from there, like it,
Yeah,
it
it's
was not meant to be.
Right.
But yeah, that was a good one. Then the northwest corner started going off, and the inshore bottom started going off. So by
Inshore by us.
like 7 to 10, within 7 to 10 miles of our harbor, it started going off pretty good. And on the 19th, we had Kaiser. We fished the spot that we fished the same spot that we had success at in that story I just told. Didn't look good. Heard that it was good up north, so we moved up there. And there was just like too many boats covering the best bottom. And on our way up there, we marked like a nice pile of bait. Like we refreshed our baits on a nice bait ball that we found. So we drove up through the fleet and realized it was too busy. We went back down. We were all by ourselves, and that bait was
Like
still there.
100% by ourselves.
Yeah, 100% by ourselves. And end of the day bite. We weren't about to clear lines. Like we were probably like 20 minutes away from that.
Like 1 o'clock. Right?
Yeah. And the far floater went off. And it was rough that day. It was all the 4 to 6s while we were fighting. And with that sea condition and wind direction, like any legitimate sized tuna is going to want to swim like basically right into those waves and then use them to their advantage. And that's exactly what the fish did. It ate, went up our anchor line, into the waves, backing down into the waves. Like he didn't really take like a fast run. So we were able to
Yeah.
back down into the sea, which we don't always recommend, but we didn't have to turn the boat and run them forward at this point.
Yeah, we just kind of kept it in gear in reverse.
And then he went up the sea, started using the sea to his advantage and stayed up high. We literally just backed up on him as we were retrieving on that first run for a while. It was like a half hour of backing down. Then we darted him, and then he took off, and then we darted him again. That was our biggest fish. There was 111.
Biggest fish killed.
Yeah, around 800 or so. And then Stone Ledge, we fished the next day.
That was so fitting, dude. To end the year so close to home was so cool.
Right.
It
was.
pretty much 7 miles from home.
The few fish that we did hook there this year, they all fought like complete jerks.
Yeah.
They wouldn't. I don't know. None of them were like, they're all like that 100, 102, 103. Maybe the first one we got, in hindsight, it was a release day. We thought it might have been bigger than what we thought. But
Yeah.
the several other ones that we caught on, commercial days that ended up being like 102 inches were just like, complete bastards. They would just swim out on top and go down and not want to come up, and just irrational.
Yeah, like you couldn't
fish.
get a dart shot on them like green, and you couldn't get a dart shot on them with pinwheels.
Right.
It was the weirdest thing.
Right.
They would go down, and the minute you get like 3 pinwheels in, then they come out of the pinwheel, go on the surface, then you chase them, and you couldn't get on them quick enough to like get a dart in them. They just go by the boat too fast, and then they go back down.
Nope.
Oh, strictly commercial days. Like almost every single one of those was a charter.
Yeah.
Like how many days did
We only
you
had
go out?
one that wasn't. And it was
One
three
down
of
on
us
the
in
bay.
That was the only one.
That was the
Yeah.
only day.
Yeah, so every one of those fish was with people that really don't fish much.
Yeah. At least tuna fish much. And then most of them don't fish much.
It's pretty good. It's really good.
It was the best tuna fishing we've ever seen. It didn't stop there either. We didn't fish on our boats. We haul our boats typically around the first week of November, just due to weather, and we're smoked by then. Like November is kind of like our recharge month. We get through the holidays and then fire this stuff up. But we did fish with some buddies through actually December, which, I mean, we haven't been doing it for, 20, 30, 40 years, but we've been doing it a while, and a lot of other guys have been doing it longer than us, haven't seen that good of fishing in December.
Yeah, the last 2 years have been nuts.
It was unbelievable. We fished with a couple friends. Taylor and Ben fished on, you fished on .com.
Yep.
You
I
fished on Breakaway. I fished on Hot Reels with Jeff, who again we'll have on this. He's actually...
So we had a combined 5 fish and 8 bites,
Right.
and fished
You fished
cumulatively 10 days, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I fished
If you count
5 days.
days on different boats in the
5,
same day.
6, 7, 8 days. No, 9 days. So 9 total days. We had 8 bites and we landed 5.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I couldn't believe the amount of boats that were out there in December. That was
Insane.
crazy. It looked like a mid-August.
There was 100
or
boats
July
on the bank.
commercial day on the bank in December. You're like,
Yeah.
whose boats aren't like shrink wrapped right now?
Yeah. There was 100 boats between the
Like
Northwest corner
23-foot center console.
and the southern
Yes.
edge.
Yeah.
You know,
That's nuts. That's like more than some of the days in August.
Yeah.
right?
In December, dude.
But it was awesome fishing. I mean, we're basically, up north, guys were drifting because there was still herring, and that's just kind of what goes hand in hand with that type of fishing. And then the southern half of the bank, it was like fishing PEI on Fisherman's Bank up on the high ground on, for us here on Stowwagon Bank. You're just drifting on top of the bank. Like there was no
Looking
real
for a
rhyme
little
or
life.
reason. Yeah, just looking for bait. And then just being ready when that bait starts to look fishy on the machine, or you have birds around you. Like most mornings, I think all the trips I did, except for one morning, you showed up and it was just like Jurassic Park, Nat Geo birds everywhere. First couple days, you seeing fish smash through the waves, and they were all like biting right at first light. Like 3 of our fish were home and done before noontime.
Yeah.
It's also shorter days this time of year.
It's just amazing how the whole light thing. Like the bites were starting about an hour before sunrise, so it was still dark.
Right.
And they'd really bite to about like maybe 9 o'clock in the morning. Probably not even.
For sure.
And then like there'd be 1 or 2 randoms all day out of a whole giant fleet. And then pretty much nothing until the sun went down.
And then there were a few randoms at like 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And then nothing until like 5 o'clock in the morning before the sunrise.
Yeah.
Man.
So weird. And you hooked when it's 7 o'clock or whatever that was.
Yeah, that was the
Painful.
last hookup of the season, heartbreaker. I think that was my first fish caught in complete dark, or hooked in complete darkness. And all but giving up hope, pretty much ready to go down.
Yeah.
Guys are sleeping on the boat, and
Yeah.
we're just like, you never know. We'll give it another, hour here. Our baits are we're coming into another tide change. Have super bad wind on tide. Our baits are going all over Timbuktu, and it was rough. We hook one, go off on the mid floater, and the fish just takes a screaming run and just never really stops running. We couldn't really, it was so hard to catch up to the fish. One, it's in the dark, so figuring
rough
out,
though,
it was
right?
rough. Yeah. We were backing down on it and, all right, that's not going to work. Spinning around, chasing it down, get back on top of it, try and get down sea and let the fish go down, and it stretches you out again, so you spin around and start chasing them down. And we must have done that 2-3 times, and we'd half thought the fish might have been tail wrapped because it just started coming up and we were like kind of straight gaining on it. And we felt like, it was where, you're getting ready. You thought you're just going to reel up to him and get a shot. And the thing comes up and porpoises its head out of the water. Everyone sees the head and you're like, oh, there he is. And then he does one little shake and threw the hook, and that was that.
That out of the water cough shake is like what nightmares are made of.
It was the worst. It was the worst. Yeah.
But overall, complete season, man. I mean, that was some pretty incredible fishing. I've never
A grind, but
it was
really
grindy and it was a lot of days. So our final November is all hunting. So we went to Florida to visit. Well, some of us went to Florida because the Rona struck the family. So only a handful of us ended up going down there to have our reset trip. But we stopped fishing. The season closed when
on the 9th.
On the 9th when we went to Florida. Plus Connor and Mike crushed it this year.
Yeah.
They probably did another, I don't know, 30, something like that, somewhere around there, I would guess. Plus small tunas too. Mm-hmm. And then it was just unbelievable. And the bass fishing and the bait, like we've, you know, being out there every day, it's good to see that it seems to be getting better and better and more bait every year. It seems to me, at least bigger bait overall. Herring, mackerel, pogies.
Some of those middle bank herring were absolute dinosaurs this year.
Biggest herring we've ever caught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely up there with those PEI flat herrings that you're chumming that are just massive.
Yep. So I'm not going down this rabbit hole, but for anyone listening that knows about this whole stupid mackerel shortage thing, it's, in my opinion, they're not surveying and sampling anywhere close to the right area.
No.
Depending on, you know, considering what we've been seeing.
We definitely saw every age class of mackerel.
Oh, yeah.
Inside the bay, the amount of tinker mackerel we were seeing throughout the month of September specifically.
Yeah.
You know, there was a pretty much on the depth finder driving out in the morning. It
Just
would be
steady 30 feet.
30 feet, just like
Getting mackerel.
Yeah.
loaded. And you drop a sabiki down and it would just, you could drop it in the water in full strings of tinker mackerel for as long as you'd see.
And those baby bonitos.
Baby bonitos.
It's
too.
like, you know, I'm not going to go in and quote all the stuff that, you know, the scientists that are pushing towards this whole shortage of mackerel, like this whole idea of what's going on. And, you know, they spawn from X time to X time. And like, yeah, I believe all that, like, you know, general time frame, but we usually see tons of small bait early in the season. We didn't see shit. And then in the fall, it was like absolutely insane small bait inshore. So like, what's not to say that everything is just shifting around in season?
100%
Like we're
shifting
catching
around.
tunas into December, probably into January. Like I bet you're going to see some guys up here that wrap them up in
100%.
January.
Got to catch them in January.
So why? Like it just makes no sense to me. A tuna is a mackerel.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the whole shift in that. And they're the apex predator.
Right.
You know? And they're here because of the bait. So why, like, I don't understand where the issue lies here. Like, it's just look at the food chain and the alignment of where it is in our season. And that's kind of what we're seeing, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. I just think a lot of it's the water temps too. I think they're, you know, tweaking things. The sea bass are moving further north. The tautog are moving further north.
Yep.
We were catching sea bass out in front of the harbor this year on sabiki rigs. I don't know. It's not coincidence that, how many times have I dropped the sabiki rig to the bottom at the Belle Buoy Situate? A bazillion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And only the last 2 years I've caught sea bass on them,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So it's like, obviously some things are changing. Things are shifting north, you know, those quote unquote spawning grounds to the south, I don't think are happy. I don't think the fish are there anymore. And then you get all those chub mackerel that are inundating down there.
Yep.
I don't know. You could talk about this for 3 hours.
You're never
but
going to know. You know, you can't be everywhere, you know, all the time and observe everything. But based on what we're seeing, that's, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, bait was pretty
my
much
thought, anyway.
automatic most days.
The only weird part was the beginning of the year when we were trying to get inshore bait.
Right.
That part was like a little tough this year.
Very hit or miss.
For like what, maybe 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it was fine.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yeah.
even in that time, there was good bait on the bank.
He said to go further and you could catch as many as you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyways, what are the funny stories from this year? We didn't talk about stick pokey.
Yep.
That was a fun day.
Stick pokey.
Nothing
on
crazy about it.
Waypoint.
End of the day, stick pokey bite on.
The exact numbers from the stick pokey bite from the year before.
Yeah.
At almost exactly the same time.
Yep.
That was pretty cool. Just goes to show you, like, never be down and out. Like, go back in the archives and make a Hail Mary move if you have to. Sometimes it fucking works.
I was just thinking about that same day. It started off with Brian really wanting to get the kite up, and we were in the bay, and not a boat to be seen, not a bird to be seen. Brian gets the kite up, and you just see this one seagull
From like
miles away. You see him; he's like a kamikaze pilot coming right for the kite, and dives down and keeps going after it, and
Brian's F-bombing.
and it was like he's pulling in the kite, and then like the thing would go away, and no matter what you could do, you couldn't get the kite out.
No.
The one seagull just kept dive bombing it.
No.
Needless to say, that seagull will not be eating a kite bait anymore.
But yeah, I mean, there were so many good moments this year. Dad was hilarious every single day.
Yeah. OG pulled it back out like the middle to end of September, so he pretty much didn't fish all of October
Yeah.
and like the last week of September.
And he didn't, he won't fish in December. He doesn't like to be cold.
God, no.
He did pay us a few visits, though.
He doesn't even want to go to Florida in December.
Yeah, I know.
Still too cold for him.
Yeah. But no, it was good. We had, as far as customers go, we had a wide variety of great people on the boats. A couple highlights. I wasn't on your boat that day, but when you and a good small fish bite and you had Pritch as a mate
That was fun.
and like 12-year-old kids fighting tunas on light tackles.
9-year-olds.
9-year-olds on light tackle.
Yep.
Stand-up
We had,
rods.
3 9-year-olds and their fathers. And everybody caught one, and the 9-year-olds all fought one. They all fought one out of the rod holder, and then 2 of them fought one stand up, and one of them was on a 25.
Fathom 25 narrow. The
Yeah.
same reels like that we used to troll X-Wraps and shark fish with and
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah, we got one on a ballyhoo on that. The ballyhoos worked well this year behind bars and by themselves and stuff. Every single time I rigged one, I caught a tuna on it.
We caught a couple
Or at least
on
had a
the-
bite on it.
Right.
We caught a couple on those skirted tails too.
Yeah. Yeah, on the Wolfpack tails.
Yeah.
The trolling tuna was fun. I haven't personally had much success in trolling, and it wasn't really, something that I had done a lot before.
Exciting.
It was a different, different type of tuna fishing, which was cool to see. It's very active, and you're chasing it down, and definitely taxing driving the boat all day though. You're just
is.
like, it's like unexpectedly like mentally draining.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like moving and thinking and moving, but it was cool to see every day. It seemed like there was like a new color that was like, for whatever reason, it'd be like trick or treat was
That's what's
hot some
amazing about
days,
it.
or it just a certain trailer was like, if you had like the right trailer on in a certain day, like why was that one get 5 bites and no other one got that bite, or it was
The white and the red stripe definitely
The white-
outproduced everything else this year.
And Flashaboo, dude.
Yeah, with a little flash.
The Flashaboo skirts.
Yeah.
We'll take a squid and like if you've seen a spreader bar hook bait before, it's just like a shell squid, either with a weight or no weight as the trailer hook. And we'll take like a little tuft, I guess, of Flashaboo that you use to tie flies, like marlin guys like to skirt lures with, especially out in Hawaii, and put that in there. It just adds like a crazy color spectrum inside the bait. But yeah, it was good.
I don't like trolling it's fun trolling for little fish. Usually you can get multiple bites and stuff, but I'd much rather like trolling for giants just because it's very similar to like anchoring. Like you're so concentrated on structure a lot of the times.
right.
You're working an edge, or you're working, a drop off of some sort, or you're working like a depth contour that you're marking them and you're seeing the bait. Like the The small fish, it's all visual almost.
Right.
So it's way more like over here, over here, over here.
Whack-a-mole.
Whack-a-mole. And it's kind of, I find it just as frustrating as what you were just saying.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You like kind of get annoyed. Like, okay, like why we, we just saw them over here and now they're up over there, but we know there's more than one school. Like, why aren't we just working the spot?
Yeah. Well, one tough part about that too was there's kind of two different styles of fishing going on. You had guys that were casting and then you got guys that are trolling. And if you're trolling and you like spot a school that's, 400 yards away, you turn and go towards it. And, 50% of the time, someone else that's out there casting.
Yeah, 10 boats all going 30 knots.
Yeah. And you get people that run in on it and,
Yeah.
It's an open ocean, but sometimes it gets frustrating when you're like you spot a school, you're heading towards it, and then you kind of, the whole school gets pushed down before you even get there, or when you're like just getting to the school, and then you drive by. Now you turn around and you start going back to where coming from.
I know.
And
it's interesting, like over the years how that's changed. There was always like a battle between the casting guys and the trolling guys, and I love doing both, but there was always this battle, and I felt like when we were much younger, people definitely gave a little more space. And like, if you started pointing at a school, they'd give you a little more like, okay, that guy's already going after him. I'm going to give him his shot first.
Right.
Now it's, if you're behind me, you don't get the school.
Right.
So you turn at a school, could be 300-400 yards away, or not even 100 yards away. And if the guys that are casting can get there first, there's literally 20 boats from like all different directions that see 5 birds coming down on a school, and they're all going as fast as they possibly can at each other to cast. And it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, this is absurd. Like, this is fun? Question mark. So
the situation,
aggravating.
It's just also, I could be just making this up, but as far as technique and tactic wise, fishing for these things, it started as trolling and bait fishing,
right,
and then it slowly emerged into what's now rapidly emerging, this whole casting thing, because the gear's now finally like meeting up with that technique for this specific type of fish. So it's bringing a whole bunch of different people into it,
Yeah.
And I just don't think the situational awareness with some of those people is always there. / it always becomes your typical, fisherman ego battle at times too. But like, if you're trolling, coming from a trolling guy perspective, like you're saying, we don't generally like just steer school to school to school unless we have space. So, we see the whales pop up a quarter mile away and like slowly start making our way over there before anyone else starts to see them. We're situationally aware. We're looking around to see if guys are following us there. Like, we're trying to, not put a whole lot of pressure on the fish. And then you finally get into your approach. Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell that I am about to approach this school. You should not. Trolling.
Right.
And I now have them like in my strike zone window and I'm lined up, that you shouldn't be running up behind the boat.
Steaming all the way around them. To cut off directly in front of them. Like, we troll on autopilot. I'm not just like randomly. The schools don't
around.
even go down when you troll by them.
Yeah, they don't. That to me is just completely disrespectful, honestly. And it's, if you don't know what you don't know in some people's cases, but like, if you don't know, in my opinion, now you know.
Well, the interesting thing is like, there's obviously a ton of guys, like some of these very respectable charter boats, especially, that are nasty at the spinning rod and and jigging and like all that stuff that you don't even see in these groups.
No,
they're always away doing their, because they know, they know, and you don't see them in these groups, and they're always away.
It's not good for anyone, because now you got 10 boats that rush into the same herd, and they're all like pining for position and getting on top of the fish. you drive a boat on top of bustling fish and they 9 times out of 10 just go down and you're not going to catch those fish.
Yeah.
So like it doesn't really
Then
pay
take
to
5 boats and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
It doesn't really pay to, raccoon fish, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
It was fun catching them on spinning rods.
I was gonna say,
We
with
caught
all
a
that,
bunch on
with
spinning
all that
rods.
being
Sick.
said, next year, if the fish come in like that, it would be cool to devote a couple trips to more of like a casting approach, going out with that straight up mentality of going running gunning.
We're gonna get some casting guys. On the
Yeah, we
podcast,
just
too.
got completely rigged up from Penn for this coming year, so we're definitely going to be doing it. But
One thing we were doing, for the minute amount of fish we did catch casting, we were definitely like, okay, the school's there. Which way are they going? Or which way do you think they're going? Get around them
And let the fish
and
come
let the
to you.
fish come to you. Like, just get maybe just out of casting range and then let them just bump over to you a little bit. And they stay up for a while. You get a bunch of casts at them, but like, and I understand that, they all feed differently. Like the half-beak fish, you kind of just have to like get in on.
Yeah.
But the sand eel fish, you don't.
yeah,
Like when they're up, like feeding, and you get those shear waters with their heads in the water, and they're all tight, and they just are balling them up, and they're going to town. Like if you can creep in on them, they just sit there, and you can have multiple passes at them. Like you don't have to go 40 knots into the school.
yeah,
But the half beak ones,
and butterfish
ones are kind of up and down. You got to be in them when it's happening. So like I get having to go fast, but almost all that action isn't on the bank where there's a million boats. It's all way east, and
if they're behaving like that, we're not trolling for those schools.
fish.
We're just
Yeah.
trolling bottom,
right.
and just trying to be in some sort of like zone. We're not necessarily going to the life. Whereas like referring back to what you just said, when they're on the eels, we're going right for it because they're not moving.
Yeah.
If you approach them correctly.
Yeah.
Just being aware of what they're feeding on, and obviously the more time you spend out there, the more aware you're going to be. But
It was crazy.
all
Some of the
super
stuff
helpful.
you'd see out there. People steaming through fleets of 40 boats, and you're like I don't know how people didn't die. Honestly,
I know.
like steaming at each other with 30 something foot center consoles going 30, 40 knots.
Yeah.
On a grease calm day at one school, all coming from different directions. Like how they're not smashing into each other and stuff.
Crazy.
It's crazy.
It really is.
Anyways, that was my little rant.
But overall, great customers, great season, good weather, and pretty much all lined up. A lot of days on the water. I think personally I hit almost 150,
Yeah.
right around there.
Yeah, I don't think I tallied up after August, but it was somewhere around 100 was the last time I checked, and then there was
Oh, you were
2 more months.
Yeah, you
at
were
least as
so.
much as him, or
Yeah.
the same as him.
Yeah.
But that's, a lot of fishing
Yeah.
for 5 to 6 month season, all things considered. But yeah, now we're in podcast mode. So we have some good guests coming up. We're gonna have Jeff on and talk about his harpooning adventures. Talking about trolling and stuff. We're gonna have Tyler and Drayson and the whole persistence group on and talk about planer fishing and kind of how they were trolling down in Chatham. They're kind of like artists when it comes to that whole dead
He's
bait
nasty at that
fishing. He's
stuff.
nasty. And a handful more good guests too. So anything else we want to chat about?
I think that was a good rendition. Well, rendition? I don't know if that's the word for it. Good summary of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that covers all
I know
the
more
main-
stories will pop up that
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
thinking about. For
Yeah,
sure.
well, those will pop up in other conversations too. But yeah, it was great. Never in my life would I think we were going to have fishing like this, compared to like 15 years ago.
Yeah. It seems like it's just going to get better.
Yeah.
And seeing all those small fish this year was very encouraging to think that like they're just going to keep on growing. We're going to have 60 inches next year,
That'll be fun. That'll be fun. It'll definitely change the, gear ratio, like the trolling with 50s and 20s. Like these fish are
perfect.
very, super manageable, almost too manageable.
Yeah.
But it's going to make the casting, much more
Yeah.
difficult.
Oh, yeah.
But it'll definitely, for trolling size and 50 weight rods, you know, they'll be real fun fish getting into that 60, 65 inch.
60 inches, 60 to 70 inches are like the perfect charter size tuna. Because you take one, everyone goes home with a week's worth of meat that they don't have to freeze.
Yeah.
You know?
If it's 6 people.
If it's 6 people, that's what I mean. 60 incher, 120 pounds of meat, you know, do the math. You don't even have, like, it's perfect.
Yeah.
And it's a good fight, whether it's on bait in 130 or trolling on a 50 or. So hopefully we'll see. See what happens. Every year is different. But with that said, we're going to end this on OG's 3 words of wisdom. Just remember, you can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last one, you'll just have to keep listening. Stay tight, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast. If you would like more information about today's guest, our episode, and show sponsors, or if you want to order hats and apparel, please visit our website at seabrosfishing.com. You can also stay up to date on all the latest SeaBros fishing content and podcast episodes by following us on Instagram at SeaBros Fishing. Finally, to book a trip with us through our family-run charter fishing company, please visit massbayguides.com or see our latest updates and fishing reports by following Mass Bay Guides on Instagram and Facebook.